As we enter the final races of the 2025 IMSA season, the bloodlust and intensity in the GTD Pro category has reached an all-time high. But with the category taking center stage at this GT-only round in Virginia, the officials have tried to tame this all-out category. But of course, despite their best efforts, this race was not without its contact and controversy. As we head into VIR, with just 3 rounds remaining, the 3 Corvette holds a narrow lead over the 81 Dragonspeed Ferrari, with Rexy in 3rd and the 64 Mustang back in 4th. It was an unusual start to qualifying, however, with the 4 Corvette rushing out of the garage after suffering an issue in practice that necessitated an engine change. Fortunately, the car made it back onto the pit lane just moments before the session began. And while the sister championship-leading number 3 Corvette led the field onto the track, it was their championship rivals in the 81 Ferrari that once again took center stage with a blistering lap by Giacomo Altuve, which gave Dragonspeed its 4th pole position of the season. Just behind were the 2 BMWs, followed by the 3 and 4 Corvettes, with the numbers 64 and 77 back in 6th and 7th respectively. So, as fans pack the track on race day, the drivers say goodbye to their teams and loved ones as they prepare for battle on this roller coaster of a racetrack. And as Katzberg pulls his freshly repaired Corvette away from the starting grid, he is fully focused on playing rear gunner to help his teammate in the number 3 continue their championship chase. But just behind, Rexy and the 64 are desperate to make their way past as Katzberg anticipates the drop of the green flag. Katzberg tries to jump ahead of the 48 as he goes 2 wheels in the grass and makes contact with the rear of that BMW as the 64 Mustang powers past around the outside, with the 65 trying to follow his teammate through. They go 3 wide into turn 1 with the Lamborghini on the inside and Rexy in the middle, but Bachler hangs tough around the outside and gets a nose ahead of the Lamborghini on the corner exit. Just behind, Verbisch goes side by side with the GTD leading Lexus as he pokes his nose up the inside of the Lamborghini. Mapelli is having none of it though and squeezes the Mustang as they make contact into the braking zone for the conveniently named left hook corner. Through the right-hander, the Lamborghini has the line and squeezes the Mustang wide as Hawksworth tries to make his way past as well. Verbisch is pushed off of the track as he goes airborne through the snake section of the course. What a chaotic first few corners in this GTD Pro race. Out front, the 3 and 4 Corvettes have maintained their position, but the 81 Ferrari has fallen back behind the 2 BMWs, which now lead the race. Katzberg is so committed through that ultra-fast left-hander as they make their way into the tricky braking zone for this tight right-hand oak tree corner. This GTD Pro field is nose to tail as they make their way through the tight right-hander and onto the long back straight. Back aboard the 77 AO Racing Rexy Porsche, we can see that 64 Mustang is pulling away. This Porsche is really strong in the braking zones and in the corners, but seems to really struggle when it comes to acceleration. But quickly, let's talk about that first lap incident between the Lexus and the Mustang, because as I mentioned, the officials are cracking down on the type of driving we saw at Road America and Watkins Glen, and they have said that you cannot force another car off the track. In other words, all the time, you have to leave the space. So, with that in mind, the officials have given Hawksworth a drive-through penalty for forcing the Mustang off the track through the snake section. So, as Bachler powers down the front straight, we see a new paradigm of racing in GTD Pro, where you will be penalized for not leaving space around the outside. So, it will be really interesting to watch how this affects the racing going forward. Back aboard the 4 Corvette, it is status quo, with the 2 BMWs leading out front of the 81 Dragonspeed Ferrari, with the 3 and 4th and this number 4 car back in 5th. And as they make their way into left hook, the yellow flag has come out with debris from that incident with the Mustang. So this field will be once again regrouped before they are re-released out on this VIR circuit. But with the field neutralized, let's jump back aboard this 77 Rexy Porsche, because as I've shown you before, Bachler loves to save fuel behind the safety car, and once again, he dumps the clutch and coasts down the straight, trying to save every ounce of fuel that he can. It might seem a bit over the top, but saving even a little bit of fuel can help you gain a position in the pit lane. But with the race ready to go back to green, Bachler dumps the clutch once again as he is tucked up behind the number 64 Mustang on this restart. They make their way down through the hog pen section. They accelerate through that fast right-hander and make their way down the long front straight with the BMWs leading the field. We can see that 64 Mustang is trying to make his way past the Ford Corvette. PRO has the run into turn 1, but he's on the outside line. He brakes as late as he possibly can as he squeezes around the outside of the number 4 through the horseshoe section of the course. PRO has the position and has jumped ahead of the number 4 car, now directly behind his championship rival. Katzberg is tucked up behind to the tricky NASCAR bend as they make their way into left hook with Bachler just behind. Now, we have jumped ahead about 30 minutes, and this field is still packed together just behind this number 81 Ferrari with the 2 BMWs slightly out front and the Corvette just running slightly wide as Katzberg kicks up dust through the snake section of the course. And as they make their way into the climbing S's, Katzberg is just falling slightly behind the cars out front. Bachler is tucked up just behind that Corvette as he hops over that fast right-hander into this really tricky left-hander. It is blind through the exit and the road just falls away. It's so easy to go off the track there, but Bachler keeps it tucked tight to the left-hand side as he hits the brakes for this really tricky double apex right-hander. You have to just absolutely nail the exit, but once again we can see he closes it in the braking zone but falls away in a straight line as this Corvette powers down the back straight with its V8 humming in our ears. Bachler has his foot planted to the floor with his flat 6 singing as he lifts off the throttle, saving fuel once again as they make their way through this roller coaster section of the course, that tricky right-hander. As you come down the hill, the road falls away on the exit. You stay far to the right-hand side, then clip the apex curb here. The car hops over both of these apex curbs as it compresses through this right-hander. The road falling away once again. It's so easy to understeer on the exit there, but the 4 Corvette is trying to stay close to the 64 Mustang and stay ahead of the 77 Rexy Porsche of Bachler, who is just behind. Into turn 1, Bachler once again lifts off and saves a little fuel into the braking zone as he closes in dramatically on that 4 Corvette. As much as this Porsche struggles under acceleration, it really excels in the braking zone and in the corners. Through NASCAR bend, we can see the Corvette is slightly wide through the apex as Katzberg dips 2 wheels in the dirt through the exit. Bachler sees his opportunity and brakes as late as he can, squeezing past, but they make contact through the right-hander, and Bachler ends up off the road, running through the grass as the Corvette and then the Lamborghini make their way past. Bachler tried to seize the opportunity, but the Corvette did not yield, and Katzberg holds on to P6 with Bachler now back in P8. And as Katzberg makes his way through the hog pen section, I want you to look up the road because with an hour and 55 minutes remaining, Garcia pulls his number 3 Corvette to the right and is the first of this GTD Pro leading contingent to pit. This will set off a chain reaction because that 3 Corvette is trying to undercut the BMWs and the Ferrari, which are just out front. And just behind, Bachler pulls his 77 Porsche into the pit lane, but unfortunately for this AO crew, it is to serve a drive-through penalty because they were deemed responsible for pushing that number 4 Corvette off the track on the exit of the left hook. So with the Corvette crew going to work on that 3 car, Bachler is back out on track, but having lost 25 seconds to his GTD Pro competitors. Out front, the BMWs continue to lead the race, but this 48 car responds to that pit stop by the Corvette by itself pulling into the pit lane and slamming on the brakes. And with just an hour and 51 minutes left in the race, they should be able to make it to the end, needing just one more pit stop after this. So Harper pulls his 48 car into the pit box and jumps out to hand over to Max Hesse. And if you watched my video from last year's Nürburgring 24 Hours, you know just how talented these 2 drivers are behind the wheel of a BMW. But as talented as the drivers are, so are the pit crews as well, as they go to work changing these Michelin tires. With the driver change complete, the door is slammed shut and the car is dropped off of its jacks as one of the crew members clears out the grille, trying to give a little bit of extra air to that BMW motor. And with the fueling complete, Hesse peels out of his pit box, trying to put a little bit of temperature into his cold Michelin tires. And as Hesse trundles down the pit lane, there goes the number 3 Corvette, and although you can't see it, just behind are the 81 and 64, which pitted on the previous lap and are trying to also overtake this 48 BMW. Into turn 1, his tires are so cold, but he tries desperately to stay ahead of the Mustang that we can hear thundering on the left side of this 48 BMW. Rockefeller accelerates his way past as the 81 Ferrari also blows by this 48 BMW. Rocky runs wide as Costa tries to find his way past in that 81 Ferrari, but he is not able to do so as Rocky defends his position through left hook. That Ferrari falling in line behind the 64 Mustang, with that 48 BMW having lost 3 positions during this pit sequence. A few laps later, it's the number 4 Corvette's turn to make its way into pit lane, just behind the race-leading number 1 BMW. And as Katzberg makes his way into the pit box, we know this will be a longer pit stop with the cars requiring more fuel than their competitors that have already pitted. With the stop complete, Milner pulls out of his pit box just behind that number 1 BMW which went flashing by. And as he exits out on track, he tries desperately to put temperature in his tires and tighten his seatbelts as he is tucked up behind the rear of that number 1 BMW, which was leading the race, but now is back in a net 5th position. With more than an hour of the race complete, Rexy finally pulls in for its first pit stop. We saw how much more fuel Bachler was saving than his competitors, and that allowed him to go an hour and 4 minutes into this race. At this point, their strategy is clear. They will have by far the shortest final pit stop. So if the safety car comes out before that final round of stops, they will be able to jump ahead of a number of their competitors in the pit lane. And with this long pit stop finally complete, Heinrich lays down the rubber with a massive burnout on the pit lane exit and weaves as he makes his way back out on track, trying desperately to put temperature into these Michelin tires. Because they had to put so much fuel into this car, the pit stop took much longer than the rest of the field. And this means that they'll have to work their way through not only GTD Pro, but also GTD cars to get back to the front of the field. So, as he makes his way through the horseshoe, he is behind this number 66 Mustang, which is struggling on the exit, but pulls away under acceleration from this Porsche. Although this Mustang isn't for position, Heinrich cannot afford to be held up, and through the exit of NASCAR, he pokes his nose up the inside and brakes late to make his way past that Mustang. But as Heinrich works his way through the traffic, Hesse continues behind the 64 Mustang and 81 Ferrari. Through turn 1, Costa is desperate to find his way past the 64 Mustang as he lays down rubber on the exit, struggling for grip. The BMW now has a run coming out of the corner and looks around the outside into turn 3. Costa brakes late and hangs onto the position, but Hesse has the run coming out of the corner. The Ferrari driver tries to defend, and Hesse looks around the outside now with that Ferrari tucked up on the inside through that tight left-hander. He kicks up dust through the apex on the right-hander. Hesse has the run once again, but there's just nowhere to go as the Ferrari hangs on to P3. With the championship on the line, Costa is desperate to not only stay ahead of this 48, but catch that 64 and most importantly, number 3 Corvette. Through the climbing S's, we can see that this battling has allowed the number 1 BMW back in contention. And just a few laps later, the number 4 has joined the fray as well. This 64 car is holding up the Ferrari and the 2 BMWs, allowing this number 4 Corvette to close in. As Katzberg puts the power down coming out of Oak Tree Corner, we can see 2nd to 6th position all in shot. That shows you just how competitive this GTD Pro category is. With Milner closing in, the 48 car falls behind its teammate on this long straight. And these cars should be totally equal on performance, so it's really strange to see this 48 car so easily overtaken on that long straight. But the 48 looks like it's doing okay on corner exit, slightly pulls away from this 4 Corvette as they make their way into this really tricky hog pen section, clip that apex curb on the left, clip the apex curb on the right as well, and put the power down as the car understeers through the exit. But on this long straight, once again, that BMW looks slow, and Milner easily blows past Hesse, who is struggling with some sort of engine issue aboard his 48 BMW. BMW looked to be having a fantastic day with both cars running out front, but now it seems that one of their leading contenders is struggling with engine issues, as Hesse falls behind the number 4 Corvette of Tommy Milner. With that BMW struggling out front, Heinrich is still working his way through the GTD traffic as he catches the number 36 DXDT Corvette of Robert Wickens. Down this long straight, we can see that Corvette once again pulling away from this Porsche, which struggles in a straight line. But as they make their way into the braking zone for the tight horseshoe corner, Heinrich closes in on that Corvette, which runs slightly wide through the apex as Heinrich puts the power down on the exit. He closes in ever so slightly on Robert Wickens. Into NASCAR bend, and the Corvette is once again slightly wide from the apex as Heinrich closes into the exit, flashing his lights as he is late on the brakes and works his way past that GTD Corvette and continues to chase down the GTD Pro field. Let's jump back aboard the number 4 Corvette and rejoin this battle for second position, because with just over an hour remaining, the cars can almost make it to the end on fuel, and we'll see that pit strategies will begin to play out once again. And as they make their way through Hogpen, look at that 64 Mustang of Rockefeller, who pulls to the right-hand side and is the first of the leaders to make his way into pit lane. This will once again set off a chain reaction, as on the very next lap, the 81 Ferrari and this number 4 Corvette of Tommy Milner pull to the right-hand side and into pit lane to serve their final pit stop. And with the leaders pulling into the pits, this number 48 BMW's day goes from bad to worse. And we can hear the engine has completely given out as this BMW slows to a crawl coming through the roller coaster section of the course. A day that showed so much promise for this 48 car ends with fire being emitted from the side exhaust of this BMW. As Hesse smartly pulls off of the road and into the grass, this will bring out a safety car, which means that the 4 Corvette, 81 Ferrari, and this number 3 Corvette just out front have executed the perfect pit stop strategy, because although they will lose a few positions to cars still out on track, they will gain all those back with the others having to pit behind the safety car. So as the 3 pulls away, it is in the net lead of the race as Milner waits for the signal to follow his sister car. He gets the all clear and peels out of his box as well, critically ahead of that number 81 Ferrari as he rejoins the race in a net P2. Back aboard the 77 Porsche, Heinrich is up to 3rd position, but as we know, requires a pit stop behind this safety car. He pulls to the right-hand side behind the number 9 Pfaff Lamborghini and that number 1 BMW. But as we know, the 77 crew has been saving fuel the entire race and will hope to jump ahead of those 2 cars in this pit sequence. So as Heinrich pulls into his pit box and Rexy tries to take a bite out of that hot dog, the team jumps over the wall and will work frantically to get the 77 Porsche turned around as quick as humanly possible. I have to say, I absolutely love these shots of the pit stops because we know how hard the drivers are working behind the wheel, but it's great to see how hard the crews work as well. With the tires complete, the car is dropped as they wait on fuel. And it's released as Heinrich is released from the pit box as well, as he has gained 2 positions during that stop and is now just ahead of number 14 Vassar Sullivan Lexus as he rejoins the racetrack in 5th position. So with the field lined up and ready to go racing one more time, it is the 3 and 4 Corvettes out front with the number 81 Dragonspeed Ferrari in 3rd, the 64 Mustang in 4th, and the AO Racing Porsche of Lauren Heinrich back in 5th position. And just behind Heinrich is that 14 Vassar Sullivan Lexus, which also gained a few positions during that pit sequence. And as they make their way through the final corner, Heinrich slams the throttle as the cars now sprint across the start-finish line to restart this race with just over 40 minutes remaining. If we look out front, we can see that 81 Ferrari is desperate to find a way past the 4 Corvette and get on terms with their championship rival in the number 3. And as Barnicoat slams on the brakes into turn 1, we can see that number 1 BMW around the outside of the number 14 car as Snow moves up into 6th position. As he looks to find a way past Rexy into NASCAR, he pokes his nose up the inside and slides the rear as he narrowly avoids making contact with Heinrich. Out front, the Ferrari looks for a way past that 4 Corvette, but is not able to complete the move as they fall into a single file line and slither through the snake section of this course. Heinrich uses all of the curbs as he continues behind the number 64, which now has Prio behind the wheel. And as they make their way through the climbing S's, it is still the Corvettes which hold a 1-2 as Milner uses that curb on the right-hand side through this ultra-fast section of the course. A little twitch to that right-hander as he hits the brakes to this ultra-fast left-hander. we can see that although Milner is falling back from that 3 car, he is being hounded by this 81 Ferrari, which needs to find a way past to continue its championship chase. And as we make our way through Oak Tree, Heinrich is still tucked up behind this number 64 Mustang, which just pulls away so easily down this long straight. And as they climb over this crest, we don't have a great view of it, but the 81 Ferrari is still hounding that number 4 Corvette as they make their way into the roller coaster section. He pokes his nose up the inside into the braking zone, but is not able to find a way past as he uses all of the apex curb and puts the power down, tucked up underneath the rear wing of that number 4 Corvette, which is falling further behind Sims in the number 3. Through the hog pen section, he clobbers both curbs as he puts the power down through the exit, but that Ferrari has a better run coming out of the corner as they make their way across the start-finish line to complete another lap. Once again, we don't have a great view, but the Ferrari is trying to find a way past into turn 1. Heinrich pokes his nose into the mirrors of that number 64 Mustang as he takes a really wide line through the entry, but the Ferrari has a run on the exit as he puts the power down. They go side by side through turn 2. They are neck and neck. Costa hangs tough on the outside line as they make contact, and a mirror is sent flying. Costa has a nose ahead into left hook, but Milner is desperate to stay ahead of this 81 Ferrari and help out his teammate. But Costa has the line and the run coming out of the right-hander and builds a gap through the snake section on this number 4 Corvette, which is now coming under attack from number 64 Mustang of Prio, who looks to go side by side into the ultra-fast uphill S's, but thinks better of it and falls in line behind the Mustang as he actually gets airborne through these ultra-fast corners. That might have been tough to see. Let's quickly look at a replay. We can see that Mustang's front wheels lifted a good 3 or 4 inches off the ground through that ultra-fast corner, and Prio had to react quickly to keep the car out of the wall. But with 0 minutes remaining in the race, that is how it would end, with the 3 Corvette taking the victory just ahead of that 81 Ferrari, and this 4 Corvette rounding out the podium. Just behind, the 64 Mustang was able to hold off the 77 Porsche of Lauren Heinrich. But it was a fantastic showing of speed, strategy, and racecraft from the Corvette crew, which claimed a much-needed victory for the 3 car. So, with just 2 rounds remaining, the 3 Corvette builds a slight gap over that number 81 Ferrari, with the 77 Porsche and 64 Mustang falling further behind that number 3 car as well. Anyways, if you guys made it this far, I want to thank you so much for watching and so much for supporting. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate you guys. What an incredible season of racing this is turning out to be. And I want to give a special shout out to my channel members. Thank you guys so much for all the love and support. I really appreciate it. It really means so much to me, and I cannot wait to see you in the next video.